Kukharevska. I'm a professional coach, and it's my great honor to moderate the final panel discussion dedicated to a very difficult topic indeed. For 2 days, we have been listening to loads of diverse information about school, kids, us, grown-ups. And now the most important question, what should we do with all that? There are lots of questions about the past, about the present, the future, but each one of us is concerned with what should we do with our kids. And in this panel discussion, we'll try to integrate all the topics that we have discussed so far, that we listened to and discussed during these 2 days, and the ultimate goal in the topic that concerns you would be able to find the questions to them. So we'll start by asking each of the panelists to briefly tell us about their school that she represents here. Gender equality, they say, but this is the second time when I wouldn't care whom to pass the microphone to, but in Ukraine, our ladies are lucky because our men give more rights and opportunities. Thank you for that. Good evening, everyone. The most persistent and stubborn are left. My name is Svetlana Zaluzhna. I'm the leader and co-author of Athens School. This is the school where I mostly work with parents and the faculty, the team of teachers, with the aim of building the school of under new format, an open community school, as we call it. This is a young school indeed, but we do believe that a new school is possible. Good evening, my name is Lidiia Bilas. I'm a co-founder of Creative Media School operating in Kyiv and Lviv, including full-day school format, extra school time, clubs, summer camps, and other formats where we involve both pupils and other kids. We work for 5 years in Kyiv, 4 years in Lviv. We have ambitious goals, great plans, beautiful team, and we place large hopes and expectations that we're doing everything right. We cannot consider ourselves purely alternative school because we have to operate under the Ministry of Education license. But at the same time, I believe we're quite successful when we integrate and try, along with the curriculum identified by our educational legislation, with something that the usual secondary school is not able to provide to our kids. So we consider ourselves to be a transition stage between the traditional schools and the ones we discussed over the course of those 2 days. And I would gladly share the experience that we gain in working with the parents. My name is Yevhen Miroshnichenko. My role in education I would formulate like this. I am an educational inventor. An inventor is a person who identifies the problem and finds the ways to solve them. I've been doing it for 12 years now, not in a school but in the educational camp, MUCAM. We record films where kids voluntarily come up with scripts, record movies, edit them. So A to Z production. This is the camp where they have no time to rest and they love that they are always busy. And the experience of this camp allowed us to come up with a concept of a new innovative school where you are no longer just study a child but follow him and take him along the way of growing up. I'm a scientific lead of a number of educational projects of alternative schools. That is to say, I help to design methodologies and I'm doing troubleshooting, resolving problems while schools are functioning. We help schools to be strong and successful. We deal with parents, with curriculum, with funding of such schools. And that's where I might be helpful in. Thank you. Now, can you please suggest what would be the best way to run this panel discussion? We can either entertain your questions or we can use the list of my questions that I prepared, but as parents, it's important for you to get involved in interactive discussion, to share your vision as parents, and to learn the position of the school representatives based on the focus of your attention. So, we want to start with your questions. Okay. Hello. My question is this. Obviously, we listen to you and we recognize that those schools are beautiful and interesting, but I have 3 kids. They're all so different, even though they are raised in the same household by the same parents. But they're still so different. But some kids will be not that much suitable to the democratic school format. So, do you face examples when some of the kids don't find it comfortable to stay in your schools? Because my kids' example demonstrates that in the same school, one grows and is raised beautifully, another not, and we lost time before we had to take him out of it. And we already heard the question from this child, why should I learn? I don't want to. Let's break it down into a couple of components. Is every child suitable for your school's format? If we can further clarify a question, will the democratic school fit everyone's needs? This is in difference to the authoritarian school when everything has been decided for a kid. Well, are we focusing this discussion on an example of a particular school or an educational approach? Well then, Svetlana, the question to you is, are there children who are not suitable for democratic school education system? When I looked at the topic of this panel discussion, how to correctly choose the school for your child, then I would start the dialogue with the parents who would go back to discussing a child. And you're right, all children are different. Some people are more suitable for certain schools, others for other schools. We have two cases, two options. And yes, there are cases when we recognize when the fundamental approaches of tuning into the needs of kids, such fundamentals as philosophy, values, etc. So we have two cases from our experience. A teenager spent 8th grade with us, and then he said, you know what, I need that somebody would constantly control me. So we moved from a systematic traditional school to our school. We're not a democratic school, by the way, that's important. We have a certain level of both freedom and responsibility, which is important. It's more difficult to study in a school like that. And at the end of the 8th grade, giving the annual feedback to the parents, he said, I need to study in a place where somebody will control me. I need instructions and guidelines. Otherwise, I feel lost. Even though parents didn't want to move him to another school, they agreed with the choice of a child. They gave him this choice, and this year he will join a new school with the focus on physics and math, and he's good with math, which is important. We are not a school with deep competence in physics and math, by the way. And the second case is when we recognize that at this point of time, for a certain child, you need to offer broader frames. The factors that impact that would be what's happening in the family, in the household, and the gap with what is happening in the school. And then we can feel that our school does not fit this family's needs and this child in particular. There are lots of private and state-run schools with different approaches. So yeah, you need to find a school that is needed to a child this year, or for 2 years at least. That's my subjective opinion. Let me identify 3 components of this so that we would recognize how those cases reflect on the questions we asked. A child recognized that he needs higher level of control because he was not ready to bear all the responsibility. The second case, there was the gap between what was happening in the family and in the school. The school will not resolve everything for us. We'll discuss it at some point of time later on. And you have to take all those aspects into consideration. Let me share our experience. We worked with both kids who didn't have the previous experience studying in traditional schools. But we had kids who moved to us, for instance, into the high school from a traditional school. And actually, it's not that democratic school is not suitable for a particular child, but it's not suitable for parents mostly, because if our school is the first ever experience in life for a kid. All the dynamics, no clear lessons or bells or the way we communicate and how we talk to kids, yeah, everything might be suitable straight away for them. But if you studied for a number of years in certain within a certain framework, and everybody looks at you top down because they're grown-ups and you're just a kid, when they would come to us, I'll be quite candid with you. Some kids would try to test those broader borders of freedom because their previous experience deprived them of that. What could they possibly do for their parents to be called in for a talk to the school? Then they get used to a new level of freedom. They recognize that nobody would be shouting at them, punishing them, calling in parents, that there are other ways of resolving those challenges. After they satisfied this curiosity, the issue is exhausted. Smaller kids have no such troubles whatsoever, but what concerns me still is when kids move from one school to another, well, different circumstances. So what would happen when after a couple of years in our school to get transferred to a traditional school? That's a tougher case indeed. So the relations between school and parents, school and kids, so much different from what we're used to. You would go to a school and stay there for 10 years, and transferring to another school would happen so rarely. But private schools, that's a contract between parents and schools. So transferring from one school to another is no longer treated by parents as such a big headache. And for schools, we feel that we are losing the investment that we made, all the resources we invested into raising a kid, and then they got transferred. Now the relationship between parents and school is they buy this service, which denigrates the quality of what we do. But as to the expectations of the parents, they are quite different. One set of expectations to a state-run school and diametrically opposite set of expectations when sending a child to a private school. Some parents, even advanced parents who already recognized how new forms of education is better and it's worth paying, even though close by there are 10 free of charge state-run schools, but there's still no clearly formulated expectation of what they expect from a private school. This is the expectation that the school itself forms, shapes and formulates. Often enough, parents come to us and they say, God, we can no longer stand all this excessive discipline and lack of respect to kids in a traditional school. Then this expectation would be met easily, then it would becomes a must-be precondition, and a new expectation comes in place, and all of a sudden a dad recalls, how about discipline? Force them. How come they back home from the school and ask questions and argue with a father? Previously I would just bang the table with my fist, but that's a collateral damage of democracy. quite an interesting topic to investigate further. Can a child dislike school? Well, no. Could a school be unsuitable? Unsuitable, it's the kid who goes to school, which means that he would dislike the school. So there might be cases when they like the schools. In other cases, they dislike it. My schoolmates I can dislike him, or I can dislike a teacher or a curriculum. So a number of factors that impact this is multiple. While parents are other evaluators of school, they might find what causes dislike for them, because for mom, not enough fruits and vegetables, father demands more meat. Multiple opinions, multiple sets of requirements. It's difficult to set out a well-balanced educational system. So if we look at the traditional school and a new innovative school, then what's important is how the system reacts to those expectations. Well, in the traditional school, they will put him close to some other pupil, or change a teacher, or change the sequence of topics and the curriculum. So the system is evaluated by the degree and ability to react to those expectations. In innovative schools, the feedback is almost immediate, and it allows all the stakeholders to impact what's going on with them. So if you dislike something, tell us what you want to change. Suggest options, agree with others, create new rules. In a democratic school, like in life, there are lots of things that I dislike, weather, nature, but I learn how to live with it. School is a smaller scale life model, and the traditional school is not suitable for quick resets. The Ministry of Education now publishes a new set of guidelines, and let's introduce new Ukrainian school, but the system itself fails to react to this, and everyone agreed, but nothing happens formalistically, but not in essence. While innovative schools are the ones that change fast, adapt fast, and that's their principal difference from the traditional school. So the big question is, a kid, a peculiar creature, where he would find it more comfortable and more productive to study, in which school, where nothing, he can impact nothing, or the school where it's 50-50, or a school where he is an actor, a co-creator of an educational process, and he matures and he gets this idea that he can manage the process. I believe the later is better, but I agree that with Svetlana that some kids run away from this responsibility. Why would I be responsible for myself if somebody else can do that? When I served my time in the armed forces, lots of people felt comfortable when you are not making any decisions yourselves, and I've been raised by a school where they trained good servicemen for the armed forces. Just do what you're told. Unfortunately, traditional standard school remains like this. Anything that goes outside the standard frame would be cut off, but it deforms the kids. If we look at our kids, it's better to be flexible, more sensible. Often enough, I consult the parents, and they claim that we are in a new innovative school now and it doesn't fit us. And I asked them, whom did you tell this? How did you build the communication feedback? So parents themselves not always recognize that the school is a difficult mechanism that could be modified depending on your feedback, and that you can ensure a dialogue and tune it in to the needs of your child. Let me sum up because we don't have that much time to dispute it with you. So what did we agree on? Kids have individual needs. We need to know our child to recognize what's more suitable for them. And as part of this conference, obviously we won't be able to cover everything, but recognizing the vector along which we should move on forwards. So what we heard is the household, the family context is important. Also we heard that currently the expectations are formulated not by parents but by the school. Parents arrive not identifying what their kids require, but this is something that would present more difficulties to those parents who make their first steps. They should recognize what is their kids and their own set of expectations, because we want our kids to study there, but even if we understand what are his needs, we need to move and transit to this new model in our household. Otherwise, it would be a cognitive dissonance. What we heard over the course of those 2 days, when there are too many norms and they're in conflict with one another, different sets of expectations. A kid should not study in school, he should live there. You're right. There should be an unbreakable flow of experiences in the school and in the household. So we should recognize that at some point of time when the ideologies are different, then there will be cognitive dissonance. I am a parent who hasn't fully formulated my set of expectations. I might be more aware when I have my second child, but how should I possibly talk to my 5-year-old in recognizing which school is more suitable? Or in a couple of years' time, well, by the way, thank you when you said that you can change schools as you go along, but what if I need to transfer him? Don't worry, be happy. Your kid is only 5 years, you still have 2 years. Get concerned closer to this. Secondly, when they ask me how to choose the school, it's not the first school, it's the first teacher, elementary school teacher. In innovative schools, you have, by definition, more sensible and sensitive teachers. In traditional schools, you know how people select the career of a teacher. Not always people with pedagogical skills end up, unfortunately, as teachers. And thus, who's ever left feel lack comfort in being a teacher, and your kids will sense this discomfort. So that's where you can choose as parents. Look into their eyes, talk to them, learn how they think. For me, What's important is the ability of the teacher to become the second mom, to create comfortable, safe environment where kids would grow up him or herself. Right now, you're doing no efforts for the kid to crawl, walk, talk. There is an inbuilt desire to do all that. Similarly, the nature calls for them to grow up, so the important thing is for you not to block it with something that he is not old enough to, like mental arithmetics for 5-year-old. We visited the Bronifia class together, right? One more thing to add here. I have no response to you how to correctly choose a school. But as parents, we have lots of room to observe our kids. And in respect to choosing the school, I meet with hundreds of parents a year. And at those meetings, parents usually say, "We're looking still." And I ask them, "How many schools you visited already?" Luckily, all modern schools are open and you can enter them and talk there. So when you arrive to a new school for a consultation, meeting with a psychologist, I always recommend the parents to keep track of everything that is what is going on in the school, the atmosphere, how adults talk to one another. Even walking through, you can see all those situations. They will not allow you to get there when nobody's in there, right? Usually it's in the working hours, so just you could easily read off this atmosphere. So when you see how teachers talk to one another, kids talk to one another, then you will recognize, oh, that's the place where I want my child to get exposed to from year one. So your heart will suggest you just walk through those schools and observe what's going on there. Bringing your kids along with you, but of course that goes without saying. Luckily, I agree with all that. A school is not a set of walls, it's people. An atmosphere is something that you can not imitate unless you observed it. And some parents choose schools based on how pretty the premises are, but that's not enough. About 3 or 4 years back, we had to part ways with a teacher of first grade. And the parents said she's not happy enough for our kids. For me, that was quite a serious experience indeed. You cannot imitate love or happiness. Obviously, teachers are not supposed to love kids. They should demonstrate another sets of feelings. But if you don't feel happy here, kids will immediately sense that. So there are lots of tools like tests run for a week or two, and you look that a kid dreams of running to school in the morning, go there. But don't build illusions, excessive expectations. It's quite clear that they will tell you beautiful stories because they hunt for you. And they learn how to help you to visualize this and that. And as a result, based on this information, excessive expectations are being born, and then truly your kids will face trouble. Be realistic, stay realistic. Most parents now choose a school, invest lots of time in doing so, but set realistic criteria and get acquainted with the elementary school teacher. That goes without saying. We constantly monitor expectations of our parents. 500 families in Kiev, 400 families in Lviv, but twice a year getting a feedback, questioning them, studying and filtering their expectations. And then looking for a compromise based on this feedback. That's important. Often enough, people who come to private schools, they feel that we are like supermarkets of educational services. Oh, we pay for this, so change everything. Don't have those expectations. We have no reputational capital or reputational image for a private school system. My kids, when they turned 14, both studied abroad, and it happened a long time ago. 15 years ago, when it was not that ordinary an event. And at that time, I didn't even have a thought crossing my mind that I somehow have to doubt the ability and expertise and professional level of the school. By choosing the school, well, after some initial analysis, of course, I trusted the school. I reached gentleman agreements, so to speak, bearing on the risks. Now, we have no such ability in Ukraine. We don't have schools with 100-year-old experience. There are no clear criteria that would allow kids to make the decision in a simpler and safer fashion. I joined the educational sphere only when my kids graduated from the secondary school. So we have to come up with something based on our intuition, mostly. You have to listen, test, look around, and it will come. My name is Yevgenia. My kids are in kindergarten now. As for the kids' expectations, parents' expectations, well, my experience comes from kindergarten, private kindergartens. That's private business, and what they offer is what parents expect. And I believe that the intentions and expectations of parents who can afford paying for private kindergartens are quite ambitious. That they would learn a couple of foreign languages, that it's too late after they turn 3, this and that. And what you can see in private education sphere is parents who are extremely ambitious from the scope of knowledge that kids would learn, but Values are important as well. How can we reach this balance for a private school so that it will not be treating us as a business that renders a set of services? Based on what we heard from the experts at this conference, skills are important, but values are even more important. And how to explain some of the parents that they expect too much, that they have to respect the individuality of their child. A long question indeed. Let's break it down into elements. The balance in curriculum. What should be the balance between knowledge, skills, and some individual traits and values evolution? You asked about values of a private business and how it would be extrapolated in the future life, and where to draw the balance, how to better prepare the person for the future life. Is my understanding of the question correct? Let's narrow it down, Evgenia. The balance between curriculum and values. The balance between expectations of parents and how do you need to work with parents? Well, let me tap into my experience. We dedicate lots of time working with parents indeed. And you polarize business goals and human values. In order for this school with deep values to survive, they should have funds available. So any school, big or small, in order to evolve, exist and say, it should be sustainable. And when you talk about business intentions, probably you mean that the founders have a goal of earning money. Well, yeah, they do, but it's the matter of how much they reinvest into the development of their school. So unless the private school is not stable and consistent financially, then it will not be able to partake values with their pupils, because it will go out of business in 2 years' time. The balance in terms of expectations of parents between values and guarantees. Even at the Kyiv market, there are some schools that provide guarantees. For instance, international schools can guarantee high academic score for your kids. So, those parents who want to get a 100% guarantee, it's out there on the marketplace. And that's the major definition. Schools who provide quality educational services with a guarantee, like linguistic schools, and those schools that are deep into values, create a community between parents, kids, teachers, and they work on shaping up the values of kids. Those schools are not that big, but they try to strike the balance between guarantees and values. So if you just want to stick to guarantees, yeah, there are schools out there like that. Our school is small. What we can allow with 50 households, we won't be able to handle 500 families. But when a school is only for 50 families, then those expectations that the parents have, those expectations do change year in, year out. Finally, more and more parents arrive who can clearly appreciate the deeper level of values plus the academic knowledge, and each kid has their own threshold of how much the academic knowledge they can study, and some parents will pay additionally for individual teachers because they recognize that their kid gets a more holistic and comprehensive exposure to values in our school. But to ensure that, you need to stay in a constant feedback loop with them, constantly recognizing what are their expectations, but you need to be sincerely attentive to the needs of parents. You need to be able to listen to critical feedback. For me, the topic of school and business is the one that I like. My previous background is business, but school was not treated by me ever as a business. I came with a different set of motivational incentives. And only when I dived deep into the process, I recognized that it has an inexhaustible potential. And the problem why we're dissatisfied with our schools is that nobody looked at it from the business standpoint. And here, the business is not to earn on kids. That's what they usually criticize us with. Oh, you earn on our kids. And we should immediately start feeling overly pragmatic and inadequate. But no, business is a structured system of business processes and business models which make the whole process of education more efficient and successful. Business is something that you can measure, calculate, evaluate, quantify. Why can't we do it in school? In school, we give score to kids. If that's true, why can't we measure the evolution and the developments of a child, or the same for teachers? How the teacher educates. Is it the child who is difficult to learn, or is something wrong with the teacher who uses the wrong methodology? In the traditional school, this was not something that was discussed, and we've all been exposed to the system of deep dive for 10 years into traditional school. Well, don't take me wrong, there's nothing wrong about this, but running business in education is mega difficult, because when you compete with free of charge state-run school, you need to offer something that people will gladly pay money for, and be ready that they might change you for one of your competitors. And in this regard, it only stimulates and motivates you to offer something better and new, and that's a great plus to all of the process participants. And it's not subjective in how we price our services. There are things like production costs, there are market restrictions, there are limitations and the level of bigger cities compared to smaller towns. When parents talk to us about money, well, it's still a sensitive topic for parents, and our tactics is to stay open. We show them easily all the production costs, and they can see our profit margin, and we try to stay transparent this way. When I started my new career in education, I thought that there is a list of stakeholders and I thought that it would be tough with kids, with controlling authorities, with parents, with teachers, but parents proved to be the biggest challenge among all of the stakeholders. Because if parents are not your loyal allies and like thinkers, then they can easily become your enemies, but you have joint business to run. Kids in the school, that's joint business. So unless you agree at the onset, then it's going to be a sad story indeed. So you need to build up correct synergy with the parents, and I liked what Yevhen mentioned. It should be an ongoing dialogue. It's important to reach the point when the parents would no longer impose their will on us, as if they're driving tanks into school. Sorry for this image. What the parents are good at in soccer results, in politics, and in how to raise kids. All of a sudden, all the parents, when their kids join school, they become beautiful teachers themselves. They know what the Cambridge and Oxford English are different, who should be the better author of the math manual. They came to private school, they know who is the principal, they know the co-owners, and they can share their thoughts through Messenger or other social media. They consider themselves to be a full-fledged member of the family until a certain moment when because of insufficient experience or reputational history. Well, the school is only 5 years. We had to spend some initial time to build a core in which then we can add additional components. And when you lag behind in building up the correct dialogue with enough respect to certain borders and boundaries, then it becomes complete trash. And then people get used to good things fast enough. Remember, when they raise your salary 2 months, you feel a euphoria, but then you got used to it. So start that experience of international schools. Create some steering committees, advisory boards, where parents will feel themselves to be participants of the process. They will understand the content of how it works, and then they would become a bridge between the school and the community of parents, so that everyone will work on it, achieve the same goal. Sorry, but our time ran out. We'll have an online broadcast of the final presentation, final word. So you can ask personal questions to panel and let's discuss it through internet. Thank you and goodbye.
Ответить на все ваши вопросы за пределами сегодняшней конференции. Я вас благодарю за участие, я благодарю за ваше участие. И со своей стороны, как профессиональный коуч, могу сказать, что вот это событие 2 дней – это действительно революция. Это вот те основополагающие столбы, которые происходят и меняют историю.
This event is a revolution. This is a pillar that brings new history into our life. I wish you
которые вы зажгли за эти 2 дня, слушая спикеров, возможно, еще не понимаю, что зажглось, но точно зажглось, потому что вы 2 дня пробыли здесь, залы были полны, был интерес. Разжигайте этот огонь. Это та сила, это удовольствие, за которым мы пришли в эту жизнь. Помогайте разжигать эти огоньки у своих детей, потому что самое главное, что есть в нашей жизни, это удовольствие в каждом мгновении. Спасибо вам большое и ждем завершающую сейчас конференцию.